All right, it's another coffee talk. This time it's with Brian Franson. Brian is a sales engineer with Arctic Wolf. And Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. And we're going to talk a little bit about incident response and specifically the solution for incident response that Arctic Wolf has developed. So, Brian, what is Arctic Wolf's incident response solution? What is this? Is it a document? Is it a service? Kind of how does this work?
Sure. So high level, it is a living, breathing, we'll say, source of truth for business restoration. So should the worst happen, you want a plan to say, hey, these are our core business systems, right? We want to make sure that they're brought up back in this order. But at the same time, you want a group that's advocating to say, hey, what was accessed during this period of compromise? Do we need to engage with these threat groups, and what potential damages could be a result of that investigation? So it really is an all-encompassing documenting everything that's important to the business, and then a plan to restore again should the worst happen.
Okay, so one of the things that I have seen with the credit unions that we work with is often they'll create an incident response plan, and it becomes a static document. It's a binder, it's 3 years old, it's sitting in a drawer in someone's desk, and they call that their incident response plan. Why does that not work anymore? What is it that Arctic Wolf saw as far as sort of a gap with that legacy incident response plan technology, and how does the incident response service with Arctic Wolf vary or different from that?
Sure. So I guess there's two ways of looking at it. One, the security perspective. If a document is sitting in a drawer, it's probably not being as updated as frequently as it should. So should something happen, the delta of the last time you updated your plan, there could be potential gaps there, right? And, let's say someone is potentially, working from home when this happens. If your plan's in a drawer in the office, you're adding a whole bunch of, dwell time to that potential threat and the response time. But from the other side, compliance, insurance, right? They're, 10, 5, well, let's call it 10, 15 years ago, you have an EDR tool and a firewall in place, you're more or less doing everything you have, maybe a light BCP, a disaster recovery plan. At this point, these, insurance agencies realize they bit off a little more than they're willing to chew, and now they're expecting some level of monitoring. They want a plan that's updated and reviewed at least annually. So that's kind of where our solution fits in.
And this is web-based, right? So you can grant access to key members of the credit union. So the management team, maybe a board member, persons in IT, but even critical information. You mentioned like cyber insurance information. So that would go in there. So all the key data that credit union would need is all going to be in that one place, in that one web portal, correct?
Right, absolutely. And not only is it maintained by, the credit union, in question here, but also from an Arctic Wolf perspective, you would have IR professionals on our side that can say, hey, have you considered this? Have you made plans for what happens if this were potentially go down? So it really is, we'll say, having a couple more cooks in the kitchen that can review and make sure that we're just staying honest.
Yeah, and it really is that's a key point to this. Is it's not just selling a credit union a tool and then walking away. It's really that relationship with Arctic Wolf and the value that they bring from a consulting standpoint to make sure that incident response plan is actually prepared correctly and key information is in there. So, one of the things that we've been talking a lot about with credit unions recently is as of September 1st of last year, the NCUA did implement new reporting rules for the credit unions. So basically, the credit unions are supposed to report as quickly as possible and within 72 hours. So right there, that puts a lot of burden on the credit union. You've got to sort of have your ducks in a row. And one of the things in that rule that the NCUA released are 3 prongs. So these 3 prongs are basically what the credit union would use to confirm if it is a reportable incident. So not all incidents are going to be reportable. And then also the credit union's responsible for sending an email and also making a phone call, doing both. So what we've suggested here at Btech is that the credit unions take that data right from the rule, those 3 prongs and the phone number and the email address, and just kind of stick it right into that incident response portal. That just sort of makes it real handy. And then, of course, your attorney and your cyber insurance and all those key components. So, Brian, one other piece to this is kind of, that retainer portion. So if it was a real incident and the credit union did need assistance from a triage standpoint, how does that sort of tie into additional services that Arctic Wolf has?
Yeah, so great question. High level, there's going to be a couple components that come with an incident response retainer, short of documenting those kind of critical business systems and the order of operation in which you'd want to bring them up. First is going to be making sure that, let's say, knock on wood, you need to engage in IR services, right? Something happened, something was exfiltrated, encrypted, in some way, shape, or form, information that was accessed by unintended parties. So first thing is making sure that the threat's been isolated, right? The last thing we want is some threat to move laterally throughout an environment and potentially impact another system. From there, it's remediating or eradicating the threat, right? We want to make sure that we are evaluating all potential threat vectors, make sure that any backdoors that may have been implemented during that time of compromise have been closed down, but then also restoration, right? So making sure that anything that was impacted is brought up in the order that it needs to be brought up in, and then confirm that it is working as intended. So I almost like to liken that to like a fire department, right? Making sure that the fire's been put out, it's not going to start again, and more importantly, the let's say assets affected by the fire are either being repaired or replaced where applicable.
Awesome. Great. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. This has been awesome. I appreciate you taking a few minutes here for our coffee talk. We're getting good feedback on these, and so I really do appreciate your time. And so incident response, it is a service available from Arctic Wolf, and we love working with them, and they've done so much for our credit unions. And thank you again, Brian, for your time this morning. I appreciate it. Take care.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.